Spineless Wonders Behind the Scenes. I'm Kathleen Kelly, and today I'm lucky enough to be joined by Gio Sancho, sound designer for Spineless Wonders audiobooks. Gio, can you tell us, what exactly does a sound designer do?
Yep. So the role of a sound designer, for Spineless Wonders at least, is to collect and edit and then add in audio and sound effects for the audiobooks that we are given. But that can also translate to films, video games, and radio and podcasts for other content.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what equipment does a sound engineer use?
So funnily enough, you can actually get away with no equipment if you're very much looking for a minimalist approach. But I usually use a condenser microphone. I've got my trusty MIDI keyboard with me if I need to do anything music related. And I've also got really good speakers that help me when I'm mixing and editing audio. But you can also get away with having a really good digital audio workstation and a really good sound library for when you're doing sound effects. So it really depends on what you're trying to achieve.
And what about location? Do you need a recording studio or just a quiet, dedicated space?
It definitely depends on what you're trying to record. So if you're trying to record Foley work, or if you're trying to record dialogue, then I would definitely recommend a studio or a quiet space. But if you're trying to record like atmosphere, of a bustling city or I don't know, a forest, then you're probably better off recording at those locations. So it depends on what you're trying to record and what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. And what about if something's not quite right? Can you edit out any imperfections, or do you have to start from the beginning?
That's a really good question. With dialogue, especially, I think there's a lot of leeway with editing out bad takes. So if somebody mispronounces a word or accidentally, messes up a sentence, then that's something I can always cut out and re-edit in the better takes. However, if there's, a creaking in the background or somebody accidentally knocks at the door midway through, then that's something I probably can't edit out without compromising how the audio sounds for the listener. So again, it depends on the context, but yeah, most of the time I can edit out some imperfections.
So how do you approach the task of producing a soundtrack or sound effects and sound design for an audiobook?
So what usually happens with me is I get given dialogue by the readers and the narrators, which is really helpful on my end. And what I like to do is I like to listen out for the entire audiobook the first way through, see if there's any imperfections or again any bad takes, and then I cut those out, make sure everything's seamless and comes together well in terms of the dialogue, and then I listen through it again one more time, and that time I mark out all of the sound effects that might make the audio book a little bit more animated for, in my case, children's books. Um, and then I translate that onto a list with the timestamps of the audiobook and the sound effects that I would like. And then typically I go through sound libraries, either ones that I'm subscribed to or sound libraries online that are free to use. And I look for the sound effects that I'm looking for. Sometimes you can't find them. So that's when sound design comes in handy, where when you find similar sounding audio and try to manipulate it through digital audio workstations so that it sounds exactly like how you would like it to be for the audiobook.
Mm. So when you said you try and pinpoint the sort of mood and the style, is that something you create yourself, or is that normally an instruction that's given to you that the book requires a certain feeling?
Well, definitely it is good to have the initiative to kind of understand what the story is about and to have your own creative decisions for the audiobook. And I'm really lucky to have Spineless Wonders be not as controlling with my creativity. So I get to really be as creative as I'd like for these audiobooks. But sometimes we do get feedback um, from producers or sometimes even the authors. Maybe this might be a better way to evoke, a certain part of the storyline. So in those cases, it's sort of a little bit controlled, but it's a really nice collaborative process. We just yeah we just kind of they give constructive criticism, and I go with it.
And if you can't find the right effect that you're looking for, are you able to make your own sound effects, like
Um,
walking puddles and things like that?
Definitely, I've had projects in the past where I've had to do that, um, and that's been really fun. Sometimes I get a friend in and record them. But yeah, that's something I've always had to that I can do as well for some of the audiobooks.
And do you have a favorite genre that you like to work with? So, for example, children's books or horror stories?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, well, I personally really enjoy children's books, which I'm
Mm.
really lucky to be a part of. That's sort of where I'm specialized in for Spineless Wonders, so I'm really lucky to be a part of that team. Just because there's a lot of like fun sounds that you can add in, and it's very animated. So yeah.
How did you become interested in sound engineering?
So I was always interested in music from a young age. And then when I got into high school, I started getting a little bit more interested in music production. Started out in garage band, and then I got, a little bit more professional towards the end. Um, but at the end of high school, I really just wanted to really build up my portfolio and have mentorship in my industry, really. I didn't have any connections, so I didn't know anybody. And so I thought it would be a great idea to do a bachelor's degree at UTS, in music and sound design. And that's sort of where I started getting more and more experience. Um, and yeah, I kind of got interested in sound engineering, right, well, because of that degree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'd say so a degree and hands-on experience both together, I'd say.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
And do you think that changing and advancing technology has improved the way you produce? Has much changed since you began?
Definitely. It's definitely polished up my works. So I would definitely thank technology for that. And it's just made it a lot easier as well. Optimizing a few things, a little bit of imperfections when you're editing music or audio. Um, they're just really helpful tools when you're yeah when you're in my work field. So
Yeah. And when you're not creating great audiobooks, what other work have you produced? Like radio, podcasts?
yep. So I have worked in radio and podcasting before. I have recently done work for a dental podcast over in Sydney. So that's been really fun. I've done a few pitches for for podcasting shows in the US. So that's been really interesting. I also do a lot of music. So yeah, that's sort of where I'm headed.
That's great. So we're going to play a section now from Mr. Ming and the Mooncake Dragon. It's one of your recordings from Spineless Wonders. So can you talk us through this particular piece and then tell us how you achieved the result?
Yeah. I'll just play my favorite section of the Mr. Ming and the Dragon Mooncake audiobook that I did for Spineless Wonders. So here it goes. This is my favorite part. She yelled, "That's hot!" The dragon sucked in a huge gulp of air and then blasted out the biggest, fastest, hottest, whizzing, fizzing, zooming fireballs he'd ever flamed. It shot along the street with a terrifying whooshing sound. It hit Madam Moneybag with a loud wham and then roared up into the air like a rocket, taking Madam Moneybag with it. What I really like about this section is all of the different layers that I did for the dragon sound. Um, that was my favorite part of it all. Also, the, I guess, asteroid type of sound um, with Mrs. Moneybag going up into the sky. Um, so let me just break down um, let me just break down what I did for all of those that are interested. So we don't really know what a true dragon sounds like. There's no real recording. So this is when I got to be a little bit more creative and kind of showcase what a dragon sounds like for me. Unfortunately, there's not very many dragon sounds in sound libraries that I could have gotten my hands on, except for this one, which is just a dragon puff sound. So I had to get a little bit more creative. So I looked for sounds from dinosaurs, demonic screams, dinosaur screams, growls, even an ogre. Um, and altogether, this is what they sounded like. Let me just play them all for you. So I thought that was really, really interesting. Another thing that I really liked is what I did with the boom sound. It kind of sounds. So this is what it originally sounds like. Let me just play that for you. And I really wanted it to eventually sound like she was going out of this earth and into the moon. So what I had done was I played around with the EQ a little bit. So let me just show you what I did then. So what I did was I took out the high end and made it sound a little bit more muffled, a little bit out of this world. Sounds like rocks coming from the sky. And I guess, this mixed with the atmosphere that I have at the top um, of the night atmosphere kind of really helps evoke that. So yeah, I really like that as well. And I'll just show everybody, I guess, what I had done. So I have the dialogues in one end, the music in another, the atmosphere, and I also have the sound effects. So many sound effects. And they also translate into this little dashboard here as well, where I can actually edit the audio files themselves and move them around. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little I guess showcase of what I did for this audiobook.
It's great.
Yeah.
So, Gio, any other exciting projects or ideas you've planned for future production?
I'm definitely focusing right now on music. So I'm creating a few songs here and there. I'm really excited to finally release them. I've had a few releases in the past that I'm really proud of, but I'm definitely upping it up this year and next year as well.
Well, best of luck with that. It's been great working with you and learning all about your sound design. So thanks for showing us what's involved in the behind the scenes creation of an audiobook and the other aspects of audio engineering. We look forward to hearing your creations in the future. And before we go, where can we find you on the socials?
You can find me on Instagram at Gio Nacho.
Gio Nacho, terrific. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.